Mailbag edition. We are talking Igor Shesterkin, Jonathan Quick, Chris Kreider, Brennan Othmann, and much, much more on today's special Mailbag edition episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 962 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. That song you're hearing right now is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is, of course, brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, as I mentioned, going to do a special mailbag edition here. Wasn't sure we'd get to a fifth episode this week, but I want to go ahead and knock this episode out late Wednesday night here. And just take a couple of comments from you guys in the YouTube section. Next time, I'll give you guys some actual notice when we're going to do a mailbag episode. You guys can send me some questions that you'd like to be covered in a future episode. But for the time being, like I said, wanted to get to this fifth episode and make sure we got it done before I leave on vacation for a couple of days here. So let's go ahead and without any further ado, just go ahead, dive into a couple of your questions here. So obviously, hot button topic for the New York Rangers right now, and probably at least it will continue to be until this individual gets back on the right path and kind of straightens things out a little bit. And that's, of course, Igor Shesterkin. A lot of people weighing in. Some people want to put a lot of the Rangers struggles on Igor. Other people looking to, kind of lay it on the defense a little bit because, they haven't played well defensively either. Like usual, it's a little bit of both. But I want to read this comment here on YouTube from Mario Vaccarella, 6854. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this is what he had to say regarding Igor Shesterkin. There's a big problem, especially with Igor Shesterkin not playing the way he did in his Vezina winning season and Jonathan Quick doing so good. I think that it's really obvious Peter Laviolette has to shake things up, especially making the switch to Quick, at least until we can figure out what is happening. I know that many of my fellow Ranger fans aren't going to like this, even though I like Igor and want to see him do well. There's a definite problem with him that is affecting the team. If you go by the Mika Zibanejad claims without literally blaming Igor, Mika's comments, as you say, being in a hole and trying to dig their way out is not a good thing. Not that I'm completely blaming Igor, but this was on him more than anybody else. I think that he might still be in something / maybe he's maybe he's playing injured, given he was injured prior to this poor play. Let me know what you think. Yeah, so I think that for sure, it seems like most of Igor's troubles started after he was out for 2 weeks there, and he missed some time with the injury. And ever since he's been back, a good game here, a good game there, a nice save here, a nice save there, but he hasn't really been the consistent lockdown Igor Shesterkin. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of stating the obvious there, but yeah, I mean, he just has not been at his best. And of course, this most recent loss, giving up the 6 goals, obviously, not exactly vintage Igor Shesterkin there. As far as making the switch rather to Jonathan Quick, I'll kind of just reiterate what I've said, the last couple of episodes here, where I do think we're at the point where Jonathan Quick has to start getting more starts. Facts are facts right now. We didn't really see this coming. We were kind of just hoping that Jonathan Quick could be a serviceable backup and give the Rangers a chance whenever he's in there. But he's been outstanding for the Rangers this season, still unbeaten in regulation. What is he now, 7-0-1 or 8-0-1, somewhere in that ballpark? Obviously when he's been starting these games. So yeah, I think you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your team to play the hot hand a little bit. I don't think there's going to be a situation where like we see there's a 5-game stretch and like Quick gets 4 of them and Igor gets 1 of them. I think, you'll see a little bit more of an even time split for the time being right now. But again, you do have to take advantage of this. I do think eventually Igor will get it together. His track record would certainly suggest it. But as I mentioned, I've compared this in the past to the Lundqvist-Ronta situation from a few years back where Ronta was just on fire and Lundqvist was dealing with an injury and they had to keep playing Ronta because of how well he was playing. You've got a similar situation right now with Jonathan Quick. I don't think this is going to last forever. Certainly by the time the playoffs roll around, I don't think we're going to see Jonathan Quick in net and Igor Shesterkin riding the pine. But yeah, for the time being, absolutely. Jonathan Quick right now is just playing better than Igor Shesterkin, and it's really not even that close. And part of that, yes, the Rangers tend to. It seems like they defend a little bit better when Jonathan Quick is in there, but just go by the eye test. Quick is just outplaying Igor right now. Again, I don't think it's going to last forever, but I'm totally cool with 50-50 split. The only tricky thing there, in the short term, that is, but the only tricky thing there is to let Igor get out of this. You got to let him play so that he can fight his way out of it. A little bit of a catch-22 situation there, but yeah, I have no issue with Jonathan Quick getting a few more starts as we go forward here. A couple other things. Go to another comment here. We got a comment from Never Better Sober. And this is in response to an episode I did not too long ago about the Wolfpack, and I was asking a little bit about Matthew Robertson because he had been called up to the Rangers for a day at least. And I asked, anybody that goes to these Wolfpack games that sees him in action, what does he look like? And like I said, we got a comment here from Never Better Sober. As a member of the ice crew at the XL Center in Hartford, I can confirm that Robertson is a fine player. I haven't seen star level stuff out of him, but I do think as their careers pan out, you will see his stock surpass Jones. That's definitely possible. I mean, my understanding is that, they definitely play a little bit of a different style. Zach Jones is kind of the offensive defenseman and certainly doesn't have the size and the strength that Matthew Robertson does. It's just kind of weird to me that, Robertson is kind of not like falling out of favor, I don't think you could say, but it just feels like anytime the Rangers are about to make a move, it doesn't feel like Matthew Robertson is the guy that they're looking to call up to the Rangers for one reason or another. Obviously, he got the call a couple days ago, then was sent back down. For all I know, he could have been caught up and sent back down since this afternoon, 2 more times each way, due to the fact that the Rangers need to do some paper transactions every now and then. But yeah, I mean, I am intrigued, and I don't think Zach Jones played particularly well. I mean, nobody played well in this most recent game, but Zach Jones didn't really play well. If Matthew Robertson is on the roster and Miller still isn't available, then I'm okay with putting Robertson into the lineup. Might as well just see what you have and just see how he does. Might as well at a certain point you got to give this guy a chance. Former second round pick, 23 years old. It's not like he's ancient, but you would have thought by now that he probably would have made his NHL debut, and to date he has not. Also got a comment here from Kent Von Middledorm 677. He's asking about K'Andre Miller here because obviously there's a lot more questions and answers as it pertains to Miller right now. Does this have anything to do with him smashing Gaudreau's face in with a puck? Guilt trip? Can't feel real good about that. Probably has nothing to do with it, but I'm sure it's a little awkward around the locker room with those two. I don't think it would really be awkward. I mean, this is one of those things, when it happens on the ice, you just kind of file it under bleep happens. I mean, you play this game long enough, you're going to catch an elbow in the face, a stick in the face, a puck in the face. I'm sure it's not a pleasant experience for these guys when it happens, especially at the NHL level, when I'm sure it just hurts that much more. But yeah, I mean, it was an unfortunate thing that happened. As far as that being the reason why Miller's out of the lineup, I mean, nothing can be ruled out because, again, we just don't have a lot of information as it pertains to that. It's not something that I had really considered. But, I'm sure whether it's K'Andre Miller or anybody else, if you, obviously it's an accident, but if you put the puck into one of your teammates' faces and cause them some damage and Gaudreau missing a couple of games, yeah, I'm sure you do feel bad about it, even though you didn't really do anything wrong. It's just one of those things that, it just happens. It just happens during the course of a hockey game. And I don't know if anybody saw the comment from Gaudreau the other day, but they were asking because people thought that he lost a tooth. That's what I thought. But there was something on the ice, and Gaudreau said that he didn't lose a tooth. And people were asking, okay, so what was that on the ice? And he said something like, probably something that was supposed to be in my mouth, and is no longer in my mouth. And that's just kind of freaky just to even think about that. There's something landed on the ice, and even Barclay Goodrow himself isn't really so sure what it was. But thank you to everybody for the questions, and keep everything rolling here. Got you know what? We'll get to a couple more questions in just a second here. Definitely looking forward to getting to some of your guys' comments in the YouTube section here. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Game Time. You should not have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy. Awesome feature, by the way. So you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without all those annoying hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. I just want to thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And just also want to let you guys know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, and so we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling here. So got a couple of comments the other day. I was talking a little bit about that situation in the Rangers-Kings game where it's getting toward the end of the game. There's penalties left and right. The game got really, really chippy, really nasty. Excellent game by the Rangers. Easily their best game of December of the 6 games that they've played so far, that win against the Kings. But toward the end of that game, we saw Mika and we saw Kevin Fiala both get 10-minute misconducts in that game. And I was saying that, like, and Joe Micheletti talked about this too, but basically that the refs just need to get some thicker skin. But I did get some perspective from some other people on this whole situation here. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So I wanted to read it to you guys. We've got Dean Opper Goalie Clinics 834. This is what he had to say. John, great broadcast. I do disagree. You cannot say anything you want to a ref and expect not to be penalized. You should expect to be in the box. Love your show. Go Rangers. And then we also had Jason Thime 8926. Sorry if I'm getting the pronunciations wrong. I do apologize. This is what he had to say. It's the only recourse an official has. I coach youth hockey, and after some bad missed calls, we got into it, and the ref was barking at us more than we chirped. After the game, we approached them to clean the slate, but also tell them they can't engage with coaches like that, eject us, or penalize us. So, first of all, that's awesome that you obviously are involved with coaching youth hockey. Always cool to hear, and always cool to get these different perspectives here from both Dean and Jason here. So, yeah, I get that perspective too. I'm not saying that there's should be no limit, that you should be able to say literally anything you want to a referee and expect there to not be any repercussions. And we don't know for sure what was said. I'll certainly concede that. But when you just watch this happen, and think about who we're talking about here, for the Rangers at least, it's Mika Zibanejad. This is not a guy known for just losing his cool on the ice, completely just losing his mind, being a loose cannon out there, being somebody who's going to curse out refs left and right. Whatever he said, I just have a hard time believing it's something that really, really crossed the line. Now, with youth hockey, it's quite a bit different. You can't be allowing, referees and kids, literal kids. We're not talking about the kid line here. We're talking about literal kids. We can't be having them, dropping F-bombs back and forth at each other. So I certainly agree with that. There can't be situations like that where you've got, grown adults as referees, swearing and cursing out back and forth with, young kids playing the game. So certainly in a league like that, no tolerance. But again, this is the NHL. Everybody's an adult out there. Nobody is saying any words that nobody else had heard of. I just feel like the refs have to understand there's a high intensity, emotional game. Clearly, the refs aren't blind. They got a better seat for it than any of us. The temperature really went up in this game in the third period. These teams were at each other's throats and going back and forth. And I just don't know that was a time to get trigger happy with the game misconduct. So I certainly appreciate the other perspectives here. And again, I do thank you for that, for sharing that with me. But yeah, I gotta dig in on this one. I do think that, and again, we don't know for sure what was said unless it was something completely egregious and completely over the top and just something that would be appalling if we were to repeat it, one of us were to repeat it. I just don't know that you can be giving the 10-minute misconduct in a situation like that. But again, I do appreciate the perspectives there. Also got a comment here this is about Chris Kreider, RGSB Golfing 2779. He said, John, with Kreider, I think you were missing the primary point. It's not about his scoring. It's about his engagement and physical play. CK should be the tone setter of the forward group, as Trouba is on the back end. CK has a rare blend of strength and speed that uniquely positions him to do this. Unfortunately, throughout his career, he refuses to do so. He won't play with an edge and constantly passes up opportunities to finish checks. When he's not scoring, he became a non-factor. He can be a defensive liability along the sidewall where he won't battle for pucks in the D zone. He glides around engaging no one. He leads the league in hugs. I like that. It doesn't have to be this way. CK's lack of physical play is the reason why he's not the best power forward in the game. He could be, but no coach ever demands it of him. Why? I have no idea. So you make some very valid points here. I think this was really well said. With Kreider, he's a great player. Any way you slice it, this guy's been a Ranger for a long time. He's been through all the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations and the good times and the bad times with this team. And we'll talk about this in a future episode. We've mentioned it from time to time already. Has a chance to become the all-time Rangers leader in goals. Despite all of that, and despite, the 50-goal season not too long ago, and what was he at last year? About 40 goals or so. Has a chance to maybe get back to 50 goals this year. It could happen. Despite all of that, you make some very valid points here. It feels like, as a fan with Kreider, you kind of feel like there's still that extra level that he can get to, that little something extra, even when he's playing great, even when he's scoring all these goals on deflections, even when he's helping the Rangers penalty kill unit be one of the best units in the league. It does feel like, there's times where he could do a little bit more. And to your point, I think the physicality, not that he completely shies away from any of that stuff or won't hit anybody in any circumstances, but you're right. A lot of times when Kreider goes in on the forecheck, and I've talked to a couple of you guys about this, it looks like he can just absolutely unload on somebody, and he just doesn't. He'll make some contact. And I'm trying to remember who I was talking to, but I was DMing with somebody months ago about this, but we were kind of going back and forth about Kreider, and I made the joke that Kreider, when a lot of times when he has a chance to really deliver one of those big time hits, and we're talking clean hits here, nothing dirty, but just a good, solid, clean, strong hit, it feels like he gives about 10 or 20% of what he could give, and basically just enough contact that he'll be credited with a hit. It does feel that way sometimes. And as far as the gliding around, I wouldn't say he does that every game, but I literally used those exact words in our last episode. The Rangers gave up a goal, and basically, the Leafs were doing whatever they wanted for most of this game. But on this goal, you got Kreider just kind of gliding around in the neutral zone and just kind of looked lost. I'm not really sure what he was doing. Again, he is a great player, and we see how the Rangers have swung and missed at a lot of their first-round picks. So, you'll take what you got from Chris Kreider for his career. But yeah, there is that part of, even right now, I'm getting all fired up thinking about this. I feel like there is that little extra something that Kreider can give. And it doesn't always happen. We see it at times, but yeah, man, night in and night out, Kreider legit could be, I really feel like he could be one of the absolute best players in the league. And he's too good. Yeah, he's lethal on those tip ins, and that's great. And he should take advantage of that skill and everything. But he's just too good of a player to only do that when the Rangers are in the offensive zone. He can bring a little bit more. And with the Rangers going through a little bit of a slump right now, Kreider's one of the guys you look to hopefully step up. I know that, he kind of he's a little bit shaken up in a recent game, so it's possible he might be playing through something right now. But yeah, for sure. I think, Kreider is somebody you can always there's always a little part of you that wants a little bit more from him. I don't think that's unfair. We also have a comment here from Brian Griffin, 2704. I'm going to assume this is not the dog from Family Guy, but this is what Brian had to say. When Hedl comes back, he needs to play wing on the first line, keep the magic going with Troke centering the second line, put Johnny on the third line at center, and Bonino back to the fourth line. Not sure what to do with Kakko. Eventually, he needs to be traded. If we could demote him to the AHL, maybe he can find his game, plays too slow for the NHL pace. So I agree with a lot of this stuff, or at least I'm open to a lot of these things. The idea, though, of trading Kakko, I don't think I would do that because you're just not going to, you'd be selling low. This is somebody that I think right before he got hurt, he had 3 points in 20 games or something along those lines. So when he gets back, if you trade him, what are you really going to get for him? And you're also trading from a position where the Rangers are thin as it is. I think the Rangers' best course of action here is to hope that he gets back and hope that he eventually finds his game a little bit and, starts contributing to the Rangers. Last year he showed signs of potentially breaking out. And then, of course, a really slow start this season. And, Yeah, there's not a lot of speed to his game. I agree with that. He's good at, maintaining possession when the Rangers have the puck in the offensive zone. That's obviously a skill that he has. But yeah, there's times where it feels like he's got to will himself to some of those high danger areas on the rink. It always feels like he's kind of skating around the perimeter. And again, extending offensive zone possessions, that's not a bad thing. But Kakko's somebody that needs to develop other parts of his game as well. As far as your lineup changes, look, I kind of gave up on this because there was a long time there where I was wanting Filip Chytil to play wing rather than center. I just feel like with his speed and his not great face-off ability, those two things in particular, his game was a little bit more suited to the wing. But I feel like the ship has kind of sailed there. The Rangers, they want him to be a center. I think Chytil himself has even said that he prefers playing center. So that's probably where he's going to be. But if you want to get creative here, if you want to put Filip Chytil top line right wing, I assume probably with Mika and Kreider. So that could work. I mean, you get another sniper on that line. You get some speed. I do like that. And then, yeah, Trocheck, I think you got to keep him on the second line. I don't think you should touch that second line. Johnny Brodzinski, third line center, and Bonino, fourth line center. I think that works too. Brodzinski, as we've seen, has contributed a little bit with some points recently. And I love Bonino. I love his game. I think he's done a heck of a job since getting here. But at this point, he's somebody that should probably be pretty much exclusively on the fourth line. And if everybody's healthy, that's exactly where he would be. It's just with some injuries right now, he's had to play up in the lineup a little bit. So, yeah, great comments from Brian there. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. Got a couple of other things. There's a comment that just needs to be heard to be believed, but I'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to try my best to keep a straight face as I read this comment, but I make no promises. We'll get to that in just a second. First, though, definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets older, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much, much more. And a tactic that my friend uses, who's a New York Giants fan, I've talked about this before, but he will always bet against his own team, the Giants, because as he puts it, either he wins his bet or he loses his bet, but his team wins. So in his mind, something good happens no matter what. Just a little idea for you guys. But anyway, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and continue the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, so let's get to this comment here. So this one comes to us from Hockeyest Guy Alive. And he's a great supporter of this show. He's always tuning in. He's always got some interesting ideas, some interesting concepts, and very rarely does he have anything positive to say about the Rangers. In fact, my challenge to him still stands. You have to say something nice, Mr. Guy Alive. You have to say something nice about the Rangers between now and the end of the season. We're about a third of the way through, and you haven't done it yet. The Rangers are in first place, one of the best records in the NHL. But apparently, every single player is garbage. Every single thing that they do is bad. And I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. That's not to say you can't critique some things, as you well know. But this is what Hockeyest Guy Alive had to say. This is after one loss, by the way. Told you they would show up. Yet he made this comment before the Rangers had even lost 2 consecutive games on the season. This is after the 6-2 loss to the Senators, which admittedly was a terrible game. But at this point, we're 20-something games into the season. The Rangers have still not lost back-to-back games, and I think they still had the best record in the NHL when this comment was made. Anyway, I've really built this up here. Hockeyest Guy Alive. Told you they would show up. Kreider and Mika need to sit down for a few games. Anyone saying otherwise has zero clue about this game. 5-game losing streak on its way. Anyone want to bet? Well, Mr. Guy Alive, they did not lose 5 straight games, so you would have lost that bet. Yeah, look, I mean, the Rangers have not been as good recently. I think that's fair to say. Kreider and Mika need to sit down for a few games. Okay. He does not like Kreider and Mika. He very routinely kind of picks apart their game, and again, critiquing is fine. Okay, let's play along here. Let's sit down Kreider and Mika for a few games. I don't know how many a few is, but I'll assume it's probably at least 2 or 3. Let's say 3 games. Who is stepping into the lineup in place of Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider that is going to make this team better? Who are you calling up from the Wolfpack? You're just going to throw out there on the top line or put them on the fourth line and like put Nick Bonino on the top line alongside of like Tyler Pitlick and Barclay Goodrow. Like what? How would this even work? I'm sorry, man. That's ridiculous. Again, look, I've even said a couple of things recently about Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. They need to step up a little bit. We've seen Panarin, basically carry this team offensively, and obviously the Rangers are dealing with some injuries right now and some inconsistent play. So it'd be great to see the two of them play a little bit better 5v5. I think it's certainly needed for this team, and I think saying that is not unfair at all. But the idea that you need to sit them down and not play them for not one game, but a few games, okay. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. We move on to Robbie Neal Zucker 3408. No defense. This team definitely needs another center and some gritty players. Blake Wheeler is a bust. Bring up Othmann. Yeah, so the defense has basically fallen apart in recent games. That's pretty well documented. It's something we've been talking about on here. It really is night and day, the first half of this season versus now basically the second half of this season, where we are right now at least. Just how good they were defensively and how well structured they were and how much they were just giving other team fits and kind of being counterpunchers, not forcing anything too much offensively, just playing their game, staying within themselves, and eventually, striking when they got the opportunity and, allowing your star players to be star players, but doing so without compromising yourself defensively. So that was their MO early in the season, and recently the defense has just been a mess. It's been Swiss cheese, guys just cutting right through them. We saw quite a bit of that in this most recent game. As far as another center and some gritty players, it depends. If Filip Chytil comes back and they put him back at center, and I do like that idea that we got in our last, couple of rounds of questions there where, the idea of putting Filip Chytil at top line right wing, I do like that idea. I just don't think the Rangers are going to do it. But if Filip Chytil comes back and he's one of the centers, I mean, you're pretty good at center. You've got Mika, you've got Trocheck, you've got Chytil, and then Bonino on the fourth line, presumably. How many teams in the NHL have three centers that are better as a collective unit, as a trio that are better than Mika, Trocheck, and Chytil all put together? I don't think it's that many. I know a bunch of people are going to say Edmonton, but Edmonton is, they have three ridiculous centers. They're all head and shoulders above the entire rest of the league. Beyond Edmonton, how many teams can you point to and say, okay, that team, their three centers, they skate circles around the Ranger three centers? I don't think there's too many teams like that. Maybe someday, I'll do an episode about that. We'll look at the other centers, the other, depth charts from around the league and see how many actually have a collection of centers that are better than those three centers on the Rangers. I don't think that list would be very long. But if Chytil's not coming back and you want to make a move for a center at the deadline, I don't really have a problem with that. It's without Chytil, it does change things because I don't think you want to go into the playoffs with Bonino as your third line center, which is probably what would happen. So if Chytil's not going to come back, and again, we don't know, but if he's not going to come back, you might want to try to pick up a center at the deadline to kind of boost that third line center position and the third line in general. So we'll see. Again, I think a lot of that is going to depend on Filip Chytil. Blake Wheeler being a bust, he hasn't been good. I'll give you that. It is nice. And he made this comment, did Robbie, before Wheeler's 2-goal game in this last one. I did think Wheeler, not just the 2 goals. I thought he was skating a little bit better in this most recent game. Just seemed to have his legs a little bit more than he did in some other games this season. I'm willing to continue to ride this out with Blake Wheeler. You got to remember, when they brought him in, they were not expecting prime Blake Wheeler, the guy that, is one of the elite players in the league. He's 37 years old. He's on the way down. He's somebody that they brought over to play a middle six role, probably like leaning a little bit toward the third line and chip in with some secondary scoring. He hasn't done enough of that. And that's the other problem here, because with Wheeler, if he's not chipping in offensively, then he's not really doing a whole lot to really help you. He's obviously not really like a shutdown defensive forward. He's not somebody that's going to be out there on the penalty kill. Even the power play, he'll be out there on the second unit, but it feels like the second unit hasn't seen the ice as much during power plays recently. So, yeah, they need a little bit more from Blake Wheeler, and they're trying. They're moving him around the lineup. He's back up there with Mika and Kreider for the time being. Maybe this last game gets him going a little bit. We can only hope. And as far as Othmann goes, yeah, if the Rangers go into a slide and or if Othmann continues to light up the AHL sooner or later, I do think you'll see the Rangers make that call. and possible that he moves over to right wing. We'll see. I mean, that's kind of asking a lot of somebody making their debut, but it's not something that I would rule out either. So good stuff there. We've also got a question here from Capadon1226. Am I crazy? But ever since Fox came back, our defense has sucked. You are not crazy. It's not, and I don't think he's even suggesting this, but the reason that the defense has fallen off is not because Adam Fox is back. Like, it's not like Adam Fox got back out there and that immediately made the team worse. I mean, that just wouldn't really make any sense. But I do think that there is something to that where, when Adam Fox is out of the lineup, it felt like it was kind of a call to arms for the rest of the Ranger defensemen and maybe even the Ranger team as a whole, but certainly the defensemen. I was heaping praise on basically every defenseman in the Ranger lineup when Adam Fox went down. You got Eric Gustafsson stepping up to the top line, or I guess you could call that the second line, him and Lindgren. I mean, it's kind of 1 and 1A with the Rangers' top four, but I suppose if Fox isn't there and it's Gustafsson and Lindgren, as well as Miller and Trouba, then Miller and Trouba kind of does become the top pairing. But regardless, Gustafsson into a top four role, taking on the spot that is usually occupied by Adam Fox and really excelling there, not just at even strength, but also on the power play. Miller and Trouba played some of their best hockey during that time as well. Schneider and Jones, I mean, they've been really up and down when they've been out there together, but I thought during Fox's absence, they at least hung in there. They held it down. One of the games that really stood out was the Ranger win against the Devils. I thought they really held up very nicely against a team that obviously has a lot of offensive weapons. I thought they played very, very well in that game. And like I said, that pairing has kind of been up and down a little bit. I didn't think they played well at all in this most recent one. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make sense on paper, but I think, since Fox came back, the defense has gone down a little bit. And it's not because Fox is there. It's just that the Rangers felt maybe a little bit more galvanized. Like, oh man, Fox isn't here. We all got to step up. And maybe that edge has just kind of been missing since he's been back. Also got a comment here from Shane Johnson, 7899. Power play running at 30% is not sustainable. Yeah, probably not. I mean, I do think the Rangers will have one of the better power plays in the league when it's all said and done. The last time I checked, were still in the top 2 or 3. I think they were second to the Devils. So I do think it'll continue to be a strength of this team. But yeah, you can't rely too much on the power play. And as I've been talking about on here, the Rangers need to get more from certain players when it comes to 5v5 play. Looking at you, Mika and Kreider, I do think the two of them need to step it up a little bit. And really, there's a lot of guys that aren't really delivering. Before Blake Wheeler had this 2-goal game, 7 games without a point, Lafreniere has certainly cooled off recently. He's not putting up the points the way that he used to, or the way that he was earlier in the season. And as we talked about, Kakko and Hedl, and you can say what you want about these two. I know Kakko was off to a slow start. Hedl had some assists, was yet to score a goal. But the bottom line is the Rangers, when they lined up this year, those were 2 of their top 6 forwards, and both those guys are out of the lineup. And even if they're not firing on all cylinders, just by them being in the lineup, it does kind of like extend the lineup a little bit. It stretches it out a little bit where, you don't have to play Bonino in the top 9. You don't necessarily have to play Johnny Brodzinski on the top line. Now, Brodzinski has played well, and if you want to give him another run at it on the top line, I won't argue, especially with some guys out of the lineup right now. But that's not a situation that the Rangers were anticipating early in the season. So there's a lot of guys who I just think need to step it up a little bit when it comes to 5v5. The Ranger power play and PK have both been very, very good this season, but you need to do a little bit more 5v5 if you want to make a deep playoff run, which, of course, the Rangers would like to do. So I figure we could pretty much call it there. I did want to get to a couple of comments here, though, about the jerseys, the new jerseys that the Rangers are going with. So this one comes to Daniel Savitz, 5774. Rangers did the full third jersey reveal right around the time you dropped this episode. I actually think the design isn't bad. They're calling it a third jersey, more like 30th jersey. They released so many of these that it's made me jaded. Yeah, there's been a lot of different Ranger jerseys over the years, that is for sure. They range from iconic to completely forgettable. And obviously a lot of them are before the time of any of us. So we don't really associate those jerseys with the Rangers. But I've actually got like a little poster here of different Ranger jerseys. I'll have to show it on camera one of these days. The third jerseys are fine. I just like the fact that they played really well in them, that they're 1-0 in them. So that'll make me open to them wearing them again. And they do have 9 more games wearing that third jersey this season. It's easy to be kind of like, skeptical too, because when teams do this, a lot of the reason is, to sell more jerseys, obviously. But yeah, that's, again, I think they're just fine. They didn't really go too over the top with them, but they're fine for what they are. And then one last question here, or one last comment from Fire Mage 9958. I love the fact that Leave the Lights On is back for the intro, and I like the new jerseys. Yeah, overall, I'm seeing mostly positive feedback for the new Ranger jerseys, so that's cool and everything. Okay, so a lot of you guys were asking for the music to come back. Of course, that song is Leave the Lights On from Passafire. You guys got to do me a favor now, though, because I brought the song back. So Passafire, good dudes, got to meet them after a couple of their shows a few years ago. Really cool, really make some great music. So if you can, try a couple of their other songs as well. I would go with either Submersible or Start From Scratch. Once again, Submersible or Start From Scratch. Really good songs. Check them out. Let me know what you think. Just a great band. And, they were cool enough and nice enough to let me use their song for the intro. So I got to pay it back a little bit here and let you guys know about the band. They're really great. They were in New York this past summer opening for Revolution, another great band. And if you ever get the chance to see them live, definitely recommend it. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.